Alright, so here we go, back again. I did a little bit of a pre-setup just so I'd have stuff in place in case I needed it for demonstration purposes. Um, First things first, as for disabling the grid and adjusting it to your liking, there's a very simple way to do that, and it applies to any grid in Ableton. If you do the right click on the grid anywhere, you get this same menu, which is going to be the actual grid menu. There's the adaptive grid and fixed grid. The fixed grid is if you're, I guess, a bit more musically inclined and a bit more trained. This is going to be your 4 bars. This is going to be a quarter note. This is an eighth note. This is 30-second note. But it'll only go down to a 30-second note, and then if you wanted to go farther than that, I usually use this one, which is actually a 64th note quantization. Then of course you can go to narrows, and that's actually 128th note quantization, which means each one of these is 128th of a beat. Anyway, what you're looking for here is the off feature, which is going to allow you to click and set this where you want to, and you can drag it however you like, really. To any length, and it's not going to give you any trouble. So, and then from that you can even turn that back on, and it's not necessarily going to snap back to it. But I'd say the most useful thing is being able to change that grid size. What I loaded in here is an actual kick that that you can get in your own in your own Ableton setup. One thing that tripped me up a lot when I was first trying is how do I make some drums to go along with stuff, and it's a little bit different than the way I do things now, because I actually do a lot of sampling and stuff when I do drums, which hopefully you'll learn a little bit about today. You have this preset list of kicks and hi-hats in which you could potentially put one of these on each channel and have your own group of separate channels, and have each one have its own have each of them operating separately. However, I don't feel that's the most efficient, but it is available to you now, and I can give you some more info on that later if you wanted to. Anyway, so jumping right into doing there were some questions about vocal manipulation, but really to understand the concepts behind vocal manipulation are applicable to any sampling situation, whether you want to work with somebody's vocals, or you want to work with an acoustic guitar part, or you want to work with a car that just drove by that you happen to record. It's really the same principle. And it's interesting because it's interesting because it's something I use a lot, and so it'll be good to see this go into effect so early. So anyway, Simpler is the sampling instrument which you get with Ableton, and when you open it up, it looks like this. It says drop sample here. I actually had set up a vocal sample for us to use with this, and it's just a really basic thing out of some random thing I found online.
Time to get grimy.
And I figured it would be just fine for what we were trying to use it for. So you can actually, what I did is first of all, I came from wherever I was over here in this, anyway, and I basically just, picked it up, dragged it over here, and now it's here in the set. So it's just a matter of like finding. It's just like one of these. Once these show up in your browser over here, then you'll be able to do that. And your browser can find stuff from anywhere on your computer. So pretty much anytime there's any piece of audio on your computer, you can find it in here, because this thing will search your entire computer anywhere you want it to. Anyway, so that's the story of how
Time to get grimy.
he found his way here. So the first thing I'm going to do is explain basically how sampling works. When we drag this in here, we're able to now instead of hearing it on that channel, I'm going to go ahead and solo this out. And just for reference, I'm playing this with the MIDI keyboard. And so you can see it's now referencing that vocal in here, and it's got all this that says, you know, what do you want to do with it? And I can take and it's got a filter down here. It's got an LFO built into it, which you can apply to any of these modules. It's got a volume, velocity, sensitivity. Some basic things you'll want is like the start and end here. Get grimy, yeah. So you can use those controls right off the bat to manipulate the vocal, and if you say you wanted like that section, you know, just to get grimy, and then you could use that and just have it start right there instead of right there. You can also just take and drag these handles that are up at the top, and they'll go however you like them. You can drag the other one as well. And one of my favorite features of Ableton, of course, is that you can always zoom in on anything to a ridiculous amount to where you can actually see where the zero crossing on the waveform is. But that's it's a little bit more advanced. But yeah, so you can zoom in to tweak it however you want to. Of course, if we wanted to filter down, we're able to filter it down like that. I'll turn that up a little bit, make sure we can hear it. And as I mentioned, there's an LFO in here as well, which is kind of useful if you've got like something you just want to add a little bit of wobble to. So what I did is I actually turned this LFO up, and I turned the LFO on here, and I'm just showing you this just because it's fun. And we can bring the filter down, and this is like how much the LFO. This is turning the LFO on. This is how much it's affecting this filter here. And you notice there's one of those controls in each of these modules to tell you how much it affects everything. I don't know if this will be useful, but it's really fun to play with sometimes. So you can see now it'll filter back and forth. So that's also a short explanation without explaining anything of how an LFO works as well. It's going to allow you to, it basically switches back and forth between two controls and allows you to do that. So anyway, that's your basic sampling setup, and so if you're just wanting to pull out one word, you can do that as well. And then whenever we go into, you can see here, which by the way, the fold key, it doesn't function as much now, but if I put this key in here and I hit fold, it's going to allow you to only see the notes which you're using within your current clip, and so it can be useful sometimes. So if we go into that, and we can see now, if I enter in some MIDI clips, you only get that word which was selected in there. So that's one quick way to start working with vocals. And it's a good way to get sort of the basics of how that works. Another thing you can do, which I actually learned this way back when I was working with FL Studio, and it seems most DAWs have this. I can actually click on the sample here, and I can do, I'm not sure if it's on this one actually. Maybe if I do this, sorry, bear with me here. I'm not sure. Oh, that's why it's not doing it. Okay, warping is very important, and if you wanted to do some sort of complex procedure, a lot of times that's beat related, you need to make sure you have your warping turned on in Ableton. So here we go. Now you can see I have this option that says slice the new MIDI track, because it now has this vocal chopped up into different sections through the warping process, so it knows like, okay, this is going on in this section, and then what you can do is you can go to here and basically say, okay, split it up to where I can play each of those sections as a separate note. So we're going to go ahead and do that. It'll give you some options, and it'll tell you how many different pieces you're going to get basically. I'm going to go ahead and take this down even lower. So the transient, so each one of these arrows is a transient, and that's where it's going to slice each one. So that'll probably give us some good results, since the transient usually starts at the beginning of any new sound. So we'll go ahead and do that. And what you see here and I'll go ahead and change the color so you can see where I'm working, is that we now have this vocal track where we can do this after we solo it. And we can play each individual section as we wanted to. And what it's done is it's created an instance of that simpler instrument, that sampling instrument for each individual sample, and you can see what part it took out. And what's interesting about this is you can actually take, like right here, you see, you know, that's not really all that favorable. We can pull this back and say, oh, well, that's not really fun either. But I'm really thinking of this as I go along. But say we wanted that section there instead. We didn't want this first section right here, but rather this right here. And we can move that and be able to use that. Sometimes you end up with duplicates. I really often end up just always putting these wherever I want to. I just find the sections that I want to work with within a vocal, and I'll just move these arrows around that section in order to help me better work with me. So on to the even more interesting part. Well, I've still got a bit of time left here. We're going to create, you're going to have your original MIDI clip, which has the full length of the original vocal, and if you play it, it will sound like the original vocal. For the most part, it's a little bit broken up, but it's you can see that it's in the order and it's the length of how long it would need to be. However, you're not confined to that at all. You can start your own new MIDI clip, which, by the way, if you wanted to label these as particular thing of your own, you can always right-click and rename those and get some good results that way, so you don't get too confused. Real quick, I'm going to throw a couple things together here and see how this works out. Also, Control B is a really awesome shortcut. There's also a draw mode in Ableton, and that's what I'm going to use right now to draw some of these. And that's Control B is a shortcut to switch in between clicking in and being able to actually draw in. So. One thing about the drawing tool, though, is you're going to be sort of limited to the grid. So if you want to stretch it out or anything, you're going to have to go back to the stretching tool. So running out of time, and I'd love to do more on this, especially to sit down and do some one-on-one, because this is really just only the very beginning. But I'd like to get you started on this and see what you can do. So. And here now we have our different sections drawn out how we wanted them instead of how the person actually said it off of the same vocal. So we should have something interesting here. And then since it's already on a gridded pattern, you can obviously throw it in with whatever you wanted to, you know. I might have time to do a little bit more here. Using a few quick shortcuts we'll have to explain later. there you have it. I know I said I would show you a preview of my other one. I'll have to send that to you soon once I get some more done. So, happy producing.